All right, we're back again with Lauren House. This is going to be episode 4. I'm going to call this "Life of a Real Estate Agent," covering a realm of different topics here. First, Lauren, how you doing? Where does this podcast find you?
Today we are in Arizona. We are in Scottsdale, and I got to admit, it is definitely still pool season. In the middle of, actually, the end of October. I was at the pool the other day.
Nice. That doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah, just rubbing it in all those cold winter people's faces. You're also in a warm
Yeah,
spot, so you can make them
you won't be
jealous
able to
too.
rub it in my face, but uh, we can rub it in other people's faces. So
Yeah.
nice. Well, what do we have today, Lauren?
We were talking about, I think I came to Fletcher actually with this issue that I have, and I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. And he was like, oh, we just talked about this in our office, which is he came up with it, not me. It's going to be the three P's. So it's price, personality, and the property that when you take a listing or you're working with the buyer, these are the three things you should consider in order to decide if you want to move forward and if it's a good fit for you and your brand.
Yeah, so actually, we had a real estate event in March, and there was an agent, Nisha Go, in Beverly Hills, and she's an absolute beast. Like, she's a really good agent, almost intimidating. She's really successful. The good thing is people are reaching out to you to list a property, right? But how do I know when to say no, and how do I know when to say yes? And she went on the three P's, so price, property, and personality, right? I have seen in our market, Lauren, the price obviously is super important. It always comes down to price. People in my market here in Cabo are getting a little bit more realistic because you had this, upward trend with low interest rates and then everything kind of backed off. And people for a while here kept thinking that was the market. And they got a little dose of reality by days on market. So people became more willing to accept the reality that their property wasn't increasing at 10% a year or whatever it was, right? And then obviously you have the property, right? Is the property nice? Is it like an area that you know? Is it 45 minutes away? Is it like where you operate currently and it's super easy? So that, and then also, is it something that you want to do, right? Or is it below or above your threshold for price point? And then really one of the last ones that I find very important too is the personality of the seller, the client, right? Are they aggressive? Are they, calm? Are they understanding? I can work with anybody as long as there's realistic expectations. So those are kind of the three categories that you look at. And basically the rule is, you obviously want to have all three of those, right? Great property, priced correctly, and then awesome personality on your client. But the reality is that's not going to happen all the time. So you really need to have at least two of the three. And if you only have one, you might be setting yourself up for sleepless nights down the road. And that's just something that you know, it's not really worth a monetary value in my mind just to like put it out there. And I think that's a lot about communication and expectations.
Yeah, so there's typically a battle that comes with each one of these. Like when you have something about price, personality, and property, there's this internal battle. So we're going to discuss and break down what it means when we're reflecting and looking at each one of these. I think as an agent overall, it really depends on where you're at in your career. If you are broke and brand new and you need this to look good and you need the sale and you need the money, you are willing to take anything. You do not care. You are desperate. That hunger supersedes the drive that's an hour out of the way for a mobile home that smells like cigarette smoke. True story, right? Versus when you get, we'll call it 10th, 15th, 18th year of real estate, you're like, do I give that to someone on my team? Do I give that to someone in my office? That isn't my brand. That isn't my style. There's so many other things that you take into consideration because you no longer are in that desperation mode. You are able to actually sit back and ask yourself, is this worth my mental health? Yes, it's a paycheck, but do I want to go down that road? So let's open up with price. Price to me is actually two things. It's both, is the seller realistic about price, but it's also, is it a price that you want to work? And I think that's a very normal question to ask. I think that's a very fair question to ask because every time that a real estate agent is giving their time and energy to one property, you're taking away from something else over here. So it kind of becomes the fear that is running the show. So the battle is, do I work this overpriced property for the stress of knowing that it's going to need price reductions? It's not going to sell very well. My reputation is going down the drain just for a paycheck. That's my internal battle with an overpriced listing. What's your battle?
So first is, what do they want to list at, right? So, and then being able to provide comps and evidence, not listing price, but closed deals, right? So they might send you some listings, but if you're in a market like my market where people will list anything and that's what they do. They'll be like, "Hey, I can sell it for more," and they'll get it, and then they'll grind it out and get them to get down to like the price that it really should be, right? Because in some situations, maybe they're correct, but in most situations, they're just going to grind that out. I really like to just give data, and some people are just very stubborn. Their property's the best. They have the rooftop. They have all this, right? This guy reached out. It was a pre-construction condo and he was looking to sell it. This was like maybe a year and a half ago. So you're starting to see like a leveling off, right? So prices weren't necessarily like rising. I showed him that the most expensive unit in that development had sold for 550,000. He wanted to list, and he originally told me 700, but I had this ready. So he said 700. And I was like, man, the most expensive property in there, which is like right next to the one you're trying to sell, sold for 550. And I could tell this guy was like, he was aggressive. Like he was going to be needing updates all the time. Why hasn't it been sold? So I watched it because it got listed with somebody else, and immediate price drop after a month. It was 330 days on market. It sold for 550, and I
Oh,
almost
wow.
felt like reaching out to that agent just to like hear their experience, because
Right.
you might say that was worth it, but I would argue that that would have been a rough almost a
Year.
year, a rough 11 months of constant, hey, why isn't this sold, where the expectations up front, and who knows what their conversation was, but I don't want to put myself in that position.
Well, you have to think about it. It takes a lot of money to get a listing up and running. If you're doing everything that you should be doing, then you've got, I don't know, at least 3,000, probably more like 5,000 for a luxury listing that's going into just getting it up. So now you have this listing that's live. It has no activity, no showings, obviously no offers, and then it cancels and the seller's mad at you and you're like, "Okay, so I just wasted 5 grand because I was desperate for the listing." And like I said, it ruins your reputation. This person is not going to send you business. You didn't do a good job. And it's because you set yourself up for failure. So it's really hard to walk away from a listing. Like, do you walk away from listings often?
Depending on the price point, I will, because I have a team of like 25 agents, right? So, and depending on the area, a lot of times that's getting outsourced just from the jump. So I do. And it's just because I have a constant, like, and I have clients that like me and they know what I'm worth, and those people are worth my time, because we've said this before, Lauren, a lot of people just don't really respect the profession. They think it's super easy, and there's so many parts of a transaction that are difficult. On the other side with price too is the commission being paid. If I was to list that place at 700 at below market commission, that's showing the guy that I can't negotiate as well. So it's like, hey, I'm going to stay firm, and also, how do you think I'm going to end up negotiating on your behalf if I'm getting steamrolled in the first negotiation, right? So the sale, I've heard somebody say this, the sale is actually made with the seller first, right? You have to come to an agreement with them, because if you don't then you're going to have the issues down the road, and it's just going to be anxiety and expectations not met. Things can get out of whack from there, So I do. Do you?
Not often. And this is why we're talking about this because I have that battle issue where I'm like, I can do this. Like, I can do this. And I want to kind of be the exception. I've always lived my life like that. So I like to think that I can go in there and do something different. But the truth is, like, I learned this at Sotheby's and it's very true. No marketing in the world will be able to sell an overpriced house. It's just there's this the buyers know too much, they study too much. And I had a very intelligent call with a gentleman I cold called yesterday, in fact. And he was telling me that if a house takes too long to sell, he doesn't feel like the agent deserves their commission. And I had a, I guess I know that, but I never heard somebody say that. And it kind of was like this dagger. And I said, well, can I just rebuttal to that and let you know that if I do sell it in the first day and we have multiple offers, the seller's going to be upset that they left money on the table. So it becomes this lose-lose situation. No matter what time frame, no matter how much you sell it for, the seller's not really going to be that happy. And it really is between a rock and a hard place. And so part of this is not just price, but it's the experience. And a little fun thing to say is like, not in a snotty way, but just like, hey, call me when this one fails and I'll be the agent who takes over. And people
Yeah,
kind of look at you. It's a little reverse psychology, but it's very confident. And you have to deliver it properly. And people don't expect you to say that. Like you're giving up business right now, and that will catch their attention.
exactly. So like when I go on a call, a lot of times, you know, that person thinks they're interviewing me, and indeed they are, but it's actually, in my opinion, the other way around.
Right.
And that's just how I have it framed in my mind. I will say this. I have a guy, he's from Houston. He's building a home. It's massive. It's 6,000 square feet, and he wanted to sell it for, it's probably worth maybe 3 million. And while it was like being built, he's like, look, it was just kind of like an investment. And so he's like, would you list it at 4 million? He's like, I know it's too much, but let's just see if somebody will throw it out there, because it was in this like beach area that's up and coming, and there's actually not that much inventory. And with that, I would be open to do it just because the guy's not being so if the guy has the personality and will like understand like, hey, let's see, at least when he gets more realistic, and then instead of like battling it down, it's like, hey, then you get somebody, offer. So that's a scenario as well. Back to what you said on, if the sale goes too long, the agent should get the commission. I've seen it on the other side. My friend here sold this guy's place. I think it was like a $2 million place, and it like, it went under contract like that. Like it was like the second day, and he's like, so do you get the full commission? And he's like, you didn't really do anything. And she
Right.
was like, actually, I've been doing stuff for 20 years. And that's why I was able to sell this that quick. So like, yes. And he was more like joking about it than anything, but people are going to have something to say on it one way or the other. I also think
Yeah.
about, I've heard somebody say this, like, if I go into a doctor's office and like, let's just say I'm getting shoulder surgery or something, and throw out an arbitrary number of $10,000, if the doctor walks back in the room and I'm like, you know what, I've been thinking about it, the shoulder hurts, I think I can live with it, but if you'll do it for 7,000, I have a good feeling that that doctor is going to be like, hey man, go kick rocks, So yeah, I think it's about meeting in the middle and knowing your worth too. But like you said, if you're just starting out, like by all means, go hustle and get it done.
You got to take it. You don't really have a choice. All right, let's move on to property. So, again, the questions to ask yourself are, does this property align with my brand? Some people are very, very meticulous about what they take and what they represent. I take almost everything, but what I post about is only stuff that aligns with my brand. That was something that I've had to learn because there sometimes is a moment, I don't know if you feel this, when like the tail is between my legs and I'm like, I am not proud to be representing this property.
If that's my mentality, I'm worried about what other agents in the market think. And to be honest, most of the agents here like very much respect me because they know my standpoint. Like I was on a tour the other day, and like people were just coming out and they're like, hey, pulling me aside, and they're like, hey man, if you offer this, I can sell this, and the guy was kind of shocked, and I was like, yeah, they just know I'm not like a BSer. So, a lot of people respect somebody who's doing the right thing. So in that case, I don't know if I'd be like embarrassed. Now, look, if you're listing like a strip club or something, like, and you're worried about that, okay, that's one thing. But as far as a property, it's like, hey, you can frame it all, hey, like fixer upper, whatever it is. So I think that just depends on the type of property. What
Yeah,
properties
it's
are, like, I don't want to call you out on the spot, but what properties would fall under that category for you?
part of its location, right? So we have this little city that's in between two cities technically. There's Coolidge and Eloy, and it's between Phoenix and Tucson, about halfway, so it's an hour drive. And I have surprisingly sold there a decent amount, and none of it's luxury, none of it's beautiful, right? But with the world of social media, where we're constantly putting out, this is it's a battle in and of itself. Do I put it out and people can see that I do represent everything because that helps my brand? Or do I put it out because I'm trying to stay within a luxury brand and only represent and put out the luxury side? It's a very, I don't know, maybe I'm the only person who
No,
struggles
it's
with it. It's a,
no, it's that's interesting because at least in my situation where I have a team, there's obviously somebody on the team that could do it. That would be the easier alternative. But I've also I know people here that are looking to do things, and somebody reached out and they're like really good on video. So I was like, hey, next property, because I have agents that are very shy, so they won't get on video. I was like, you know what? When we get this listing, I'm gonna have this like influencer style go through that your listing, but it's also like a fresh face on some of the marketing. It doesn't necessarily have to be you, or it could be, just of the property. I've found that when you're showing your personality within the property, it does better anyway. So I think there's different ways around it. If it's a listing that you believe you can help the client out, I think you can push that aside.
I mean, you have to think about the condition of the property. If the seller doesn't have any money to fix it and the air conditioning's broken and there's this and there's that, is that something you really want to take on? Is that worth it? Because we all know that a house will sell at any price, but if it's top notch, it sells for top dollar. And if it's not, you aren't selling it for top dollar. You're selling it like a fire sale, more or less. And if you go to Chanel and try and buy a Calvin Klein, like it doesn't work. And same thing, you can't go to Calvin Klein and they're charging 5 grand for a bag, and you're like, this ain't Chanel. Again, it kind of goes back to the seller, but where is the property at on the saleable scale of condition, of operational and functional quality? I don't know, or the list that you have, because not every homeowner takes care of their house the way that you want them to, and not every homeowner wants to put money into the house or can't put money into the house prior to listing.
Here's something else. I have an agent and she does all high end stuff. She took on a listing that was like literally probably 10 times below her usual price point. It was a doctor, so it was like an investment property that they had owned for a while here. And he actually ended up referring her to one of his friends who was like more in the category that she was in, right? So, taking on work, you never know what can happen, and I'm not saying like just wait, because I've described this as like, hey, I'm sitting at the plate right now, and like unless I got a pitch I like, I'm gonna keep taking some ball, and fouling off the ones I don't need, and staying alive in the batter box, as opposed to just swinging at everything. But like I
Yeah.
said, if you're starting out, by all means, but also you have to take into consideration if you can sell it and help the client, then like there's good things not only that happen from that sale, but also potentially down the line. But if it's going to be like damaging to the brand or not feeling right about it, maybe just don't do it then.
And again, no matter what point you are at in your career, it can be difficult to walk away from the listing. Like my thought process is always, if this person wants to sell, this is going to be a paycheck. So why shouldn't it be my paycheck? No matter how hard it is to get there, I've always thought like that. So that's why I kind of take everything. And then we have, even if you want to rank higher, the people who send you referrals. Well, when somebody sends you a referral, they're not sending it to you in your price point in the location that you want. So you're completely have no control over what is coming in, but you have constant business. And that's how my business is run for many years. And when I sat down and did an audit of like the location, the price point, the condition, all of these things, you end up going, wow, I drive all over this valley for paychecks to help people, but it's not condensed, right? So again, it goes back to the question, like, could you be focusing on one area by cold calling, door knocking, open houses, whatever it is, to be in an area that you choose where you have control over your income and your marketing and you develop a name in one area, or do you work by referrals? And there's no right or wrong.
I've seen where people, they're just like almost in the business of referrals. And they're, for example, I have great clients from San Francisco and they've introduced me to somebody. And I'm going to go back to them if this client ends up buying and be like, hey, and they're going to know anyway. And I guarantee you, they're going to be like, hey, get us a bottle of tequila. Whereas obviously if it's more like your business, hey, so I've seen this too where this guy contacted me. He was Canadian and he's like, hey, I've got this lead generation system for people that are looking to go to Cabo. And I was like, hey, you know, let's get down to it. Like, what are you looking for? And generally here, it's like a 25% commission. He told me 50%. And I said, okay, well, if you're going to charge double the industry standard, can you explain to me like what else you're going to entail in that? And he said he was going to warm up the leads. He was going to send warm leads. So I said, okay. I said, all right, well, then let me ask you a question. When your guy from Toronto asks you that he hears Cabo is getting busy and is looking at going to the Todos Santos market or the East Cape market, and he's looking at a condo, can you explain to me how you're going to warm that client up? And he clearly had no idea. I could have made up cities, and it would have been the same thing. And I was like, if you catch my point, I was like, no offense, but you couldn't warm up a hot dog. Like you don't know this market. So I'm all about getting business at market rate. And then there was somebody else. This was like a $1.2 million home. It was like the guy's grandfather was selling it, but he was selling it for his grandfather, right? But he's not a licensed agent. So we call him coyotes here. It was just like off market, and what can you do? It's like maybe Facebook, like things like that. It wasn't on the MLS, and then agents here are afraid to refer or bring somebody there because there's been like where people don't pay commission and it's not necessarily enforceable. So this had been sitting for a year and he's like, hey, my grandfather's getting like antsy. He wants to sell. And he came back at the same like double market rate. I'm here. I can help you if you want me to help you get your license. So you can, because obviously people in this area. I'll help you with that. There's ways to do it, but at that rate, that's just something. And Lauren, this is like an hour drive from where I am right now. So it was just
Comes back to
it
the
was gonna
location of the
be
property. Is it
it
worth
was gonna
it?
be yeah, exactly. So I was just like, hey, if we're that far off at the beginning, I don't even know if there's any counter that's necessary.
And it's a hard truth to look in the mirror and deny business because you know that you're denying yourself money, which kind of leads us into personality. I was going to say sometimes there's character building clients, right? Like you have the people who really put you through the ringer, but it can be in a healthier way than like in an intimidation way or bossy or mean or manipulative. Like there's different types of character building clients. And that's why when the people who come around and are just angels, you're so grateful for those clients because you're like, wow, I finally just got an easy one or somebody you don't mind working with. And those are the people who will refer you and you are able to move forward with. But, you know, if you have the other two pieces, the price and the property, and the seller or the buyer is challenging, you kind of have to make that gut decision up front because if you say, yes, we're going to work together, and then you start moving forward and you regret it, you can fire them, but you've already put so much time and effort and perhaps money into it. So you don't want to stop. You end up having to see it out. What do you do?
Yeah. So I'm big on personality. So I'm going to go off on this.
Okay.
If you have price and property aligned and like good price, good property, and you are communicating to them like, hey, the expectations, it's hard for me. I wouldn't say that. I would say that, I believe I can get the job done regardless. I'll also say this too. I have, they're clients from Nebraska, Scott and Mary, and like they kind of seemed like I love them, you know, but it wasn't like any like joking. It was just like a very serious, you know, tour, but like they were so nice. And I wish I had more people like them, even though like the personalities weren't necessarily, that was just who they are, because generally I get people that are more outgoing. I think on the last call I mentioned this guy from Los Angeles who does commercial real estate. And, we drop him off and he's like, "Hey, where can I go watch football?" And I was training an agent and I told my client from LA, I'm like, "Hey, do you mind if I have an agent like just sitting in the back seat, and observing and like being a part of it?" And he's like, "Absolutely not." Like, cool. We drop the client off at the sports bar so he can go watch, college football. And he's like, "Man, how do you get like client? Like this guy's so easy." He's just like really nice. He's like very direct. He's buying us lunch. It comes back to the fact that I'm putting myself out there with content so people see it, right? And it's probably going to push some people away. Like Lauren, the guy I work for, Owen, who's very wealthy. He's like, "Fletcher," it's like, "You need to dress up nicer," but I've always been like
His
the
brand.
the college like soccer guy. I'm wearing like Mexico soccer jerseys, and so I come off as like this unassuming, and certainly I can play that role, but maybe that turns people off. Especially on high end when they want somebody to be listing. At the end of the day, it's about getting the results. So if you like for you, Lauren, like you're out there, you have a personality. I think the more video that you do, the more content that you do, the more people are going to be like, "Hey, this girl's like super cool. I'd love to work with her." And by that, you're kind of attracting that type of person that would be fun to work with.
You love a good reverse engineer. We've talked about this in the past, and you're doing it again. I love it. A couple things. Number one is to your point of like, that's who Scott and Mary are. Just kind of, they're not silly or fun. I've noticed that when I cold call, in a way, I almost feel relief and I'm off the hook of having to like entertain and build this relationship because it started as a cold call. There is no friendship in place versus starting it from a referral or an open house where you meet them in person. They know your mutual friend. And all of a sudden it becomes like, "Hey, let's go to lunch. Let's get drinks. Let's talk business." And it's much more friendly. The cold call people are just business. And I've had to learn, which I'm still kind of learning, how to treat that because I bring and insert my personality and try to befriend them. And they don't want me to be their friend. This is business to them. That's also been a big difference working in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Miami. Miami, because there's so many people from New York who reside there, that personality is not something I'm overly familiar with because being in Arizona, we don't have a ton of people in New York here. And I've definitely learned like it is business, it is direct, there is no fluff, there is no fun, and it's not in a mean way. I actually really appreciate it. I'm like, wow, I am saving so much time. I don't have to sit with you on a phone call once a week to build a relationship. It's we talk when we need something from each other and we're both okay with that. That is actually becoming my new favorite kind of business because I have a life again. I'm not just constantly like, "Hey guys, what are you doing? Where are we going to go?" Blah, blah, blah. Like I get to go enjoy my life and just work when I need to work. It's been very special.
So you have like people you want to work with, maybe people that are just like Scott and Mary, who once again, I love them. It just, I don't get a lot of people like that. And they were so awesome, right? And they were very direct when they needed to be. And you have people that maybe you don't necessarily, or they might be forceful. And I've always taken my ego out of it. I had to, so we have a golf course development. It's a TPC golf course in Loretto. It's the only TPC course outside of Canada and the US. It's incredible. And the guy I worked for did it. It's beautiful. Anyway, I was up there and we have clients that are in town. And because I had to go up last minute, I was not able to do a retour of a home. And somebody else on my team who's like super professional did the tour, and then afterwards calls me and she's like, "So when are we sending the offer?" And I'm like, "You mean, when am I sending the offer?" Just joking with her. And, we came in well below asking price. And there was a conversation that I wasn't a part of that was like, "Hey, if we increase earnest money in escrow from the get go, they would be more willing to take this reduction in price." So I go, "Okay." So I had that information, drew up the offer, sent it over. and it came back like, why did you have this increase in, the earnest money? And I was like, hold on, I was told this. I didn't. My mistake was I didn't confirm it. Now the other agent was all butthurt about it, and it was pretty
Hmm.
forceful the way it came back. Like it was kind of like, hey, do you like know how to do your job type thing. I was able to be like, hey, I understand where they're coming from. And I was like, told her, I was like, dude, not a big deal. Like, she's like, I'm out of this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, dude, don't worry about it. Like, and literally two conversations later, like a phone call, an email, and a couple texts later, it's like it didn't happen. And I was actually telling her, I was like, the fact that like the conversation is now continued too, it's like, I think their way of not apologizing, but just saying like, hey, this wasn't. So you have difficult people, and like, I think really good agents are good at handling personalities and not taking things personal. Like I'm really look up to people that don't get offended and don't react. And I very rarely react. Sometimes like I'll react in my mind, you know, or, like outside of the transaction. But I very rarely do it. And I look up to people that are just very even keeled.
It's funny you say that because if anybody has ever studied psychology or read the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, he talks about people's favorite word is no. So I have for many years taken that advice to heart and I ask questions starting with, are you against? Are you opposed? Would you mind? Asking questions that warrant a no answer not only gets you a quicker response and it gets you more information because if I ask you, Fletcher, hey, can you go to dinner on Saturday night? If you say no, you're going to say, no, I have this, 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 and this. Rarely people are like, I can't, but thank you for the invite, which is like what you should do because it's nobody's business, right? And so when you take this tactic, this tool, and you start applying it to business, and at the same time, you realize like, I'm a yes person. I need to be a yes person if I want to make this business what it is, just like superstar above and beyond. Let's go. You got to be a yes person. But if everybody's constantly wanting to be the alpha and dominant and they always want to say no, it makes them aggressive. So you have to like come at it with a different approach, which is asking no faced questions in order to get the response. It has been a huge game changer. And I think a part of it is like, as you, and tell me if you experience this, as you gain some success, as you gain financial security in real estate, and you have this upward trajectory, your ego grows as well. And when your ego grows, I don't know. I know I saw myself not being so nice to people. I was less patient. I kind of felt like everybody around me was stupid and it was totally just my ego. And I have had since to go back and apologize. I just did it yesterday to somebody who I did not feel I treated very nicely many years ago because I was finally seeing some success and I was at like the top of my game, and it was like the top I've ever been at. And so I've had to go back and apologize, not to my clients, but to other agents. And you have to remember the personality of the other agent is also extremely crucial. Your own personality, your client's personality, and the agent's personality. It's a lot to deal with. And you kind of have to be that sponge, that chameleon in between. And sometimes don't just be the messenger. Like remember you have a job to do and your job is to take a step back and how can you field this question, this answer? How can I be the problem solver? You don't go to your client with every single question that comes to you. That is just a hell no. You do not do that. You need to be the professional and take charge. And when you have somebody who is an alpha as a client, I've been asked, why are you asking me this? Why am I paying you if you're asking me this question? That is a dagger in your gut.
Like Lauren, we have, I think it's like 1,100 or 1,200 agents in the Baja area. It's probably too many for the area. But anyway, last week somebody asked me to be like president of the Los Cabos Association for the agents. And then this happened. So the guy's like kind of questioning my professional, uh, resume. And I wanted to come back and be like, look, I was going to like, hey, I'm going to be in, like all this stuff. And I just was like, I don't even need to go there. All I need to do is just move this transaction closer to the offer because we're writing the offer right now. Let me take my ego out of it. I'm not important. And to be honest, I never really was, because a lot of times, like when you have great clients, it's awesome, but, I have had to do it with other agents though, for sure.
Yeah.
That's where I think the ego can come in. And, man, I got smoked in a negotiation once because of ego. And it was this older lady client or, agent. And dude, she just like, I was like, I had to, it was like devastating. I was like just owned. I had a
But
situation.
what did you learn from it?
I
Or
learned
did you?
it was the exact same thing, Lauren. I couldn't miss. I was basically calling a bluff that wasn't a bluff, and we lost out on the property. Anyway, it looked bad, but that was a result of me just being on fire at that moment. And then with other agents, I had a situation where probably an hour after I left the property, I called him and he didn't like, he was busy. So I just left him a voice message on WhatsApp and he sent me a message. He's like, man, no worries. Like, thank you so much for sending that. It's not a big deal. But, and I can't remember the exact, but I felt bad and it was somewhat like ego driven. So yes, there's always that situation. I have been pretty good about it with clients though and not reacting or at least doing a job where I don't need to like justify, because people ask all sorts of, ridiculous things and I'm answering, I don't question that, but it's for me it's more with other agents and being a good part of the real estate community here with them too.
Yeah, I think people undervalue the relationship of agent to agent. It's needed. I don't think you need to spend all your time going out and getting to know agents, but I have definitely during COVID, actually, I had a client and she was like, like, how did we get this house? And I paused so long that she was like, are you still on the phone? And I didn't know what to say because the truth was they got the house because the agent and I got along. And she told me that. She goes, I actually chose you and pushed for your offer because I knew that we would work well together. So when my client was like, I don't understand, like, how did we get the house? There were 15 offers or whatever it was at the time. And I just paused. And I was like, she honestly just said that she liked me and we got along and she knew that we'd have a good transaction together. And she's like, oh my God, thank you so much. And
Yeah.
it's not often that we get to hear that praise from a client, but when you have that click with someone, it doesn't matter if it's a client or an agent, it just works and you look forward to their phone call. You look forward to spending time with them. It's not this eye roll, which kind of goes back to the other side of the spectrum of the clients who scare the shit out of you.
Yeah.
I have clients from time to time who just intimidate me. And I do look at it as I have a lot to learn from them and I have to like put my big girl pants on because sometimes it makes me think that the other people I work with, it's like autopilot. Not that I'm not working hard, but I don't have to be as thoughtful and as proactive. And I can just kind of go with what I know. So that's been a fun one. But these are the questions that I always ask myself is like, is it worth it? Is it worth my time? Is it worth, I want the paycheck, but what do I willing to forego to make this happen? And if I can't make it happen, how does that affect me?
I always like to have because I have probably like just 3 or 4 agents in my office, and they know me, and I'll be like, "Hey, this is a situation." I'll be like, "Fletch, that sounds like a terrible idea," or they'll be like, "Hey, I think you can work that one out." So I'm generally getting people who know me, give advice on that. I want to ask you this one on personalities and stuff. I've been wanting to ask you this for a minute. I don't run into this as a male agent. Um, I have the agent that I mentioned that is shy. I finally got her to do a video, and then a creeper reached out, and it had nothing to do with the video, but she, was like, now she will not do another video. And like, she showed me the message. It was pretty bad. What do you do? Like, do you have like a sixth sense for, because I'm sure there's more than one situation where this happens with you as a female agent. Like, what are your thoughts on this? And like, how do you, like, I don't need to protect myself. What's the worst thing that, is somebody might say something to me, right? But as a female, I feel like that's a lot more of a delicate thing and something that it doesn't come into consideration for me. So creepers, do you sniff them out? Do they come like later on? How do you like, what would be your advice to female agents when they're in that situation?
Oh, this is such a good question. So you have you have two parts to this. The first part is your safety. When you are a real estate agent, especially when you're new, you receive a lead, you go meet them at a vacant house. Single man. Back in the day, we didn't have the app called Forewarn. I don't know if you guys have it in Mexico, but I can go in and I can see their address, all of their addresses, all of their phone numbers, all the cars they've ever driven, all of their criminal history, and a couple other things. And so before that, you get this text. And if it feels fishy in your gut, it is. This goes back to knowing where to spend your time. You can go about it. This is like for a stranger, right? If you don't know who it is, you tell somebody where you're going, you bring a lender, you bring somebody with you. I know a lot of people whose like husbands ended up getting their real estate license just so they can both be at showings and both speak, which I thought was interesting. I don't think my boyfriend would ever do that for me. Um, but so you have the physical safety. I do carry a gun with me and I have pulled it out because I'm not willing to risk my life for a house. So that's number one. Number two is that emotional feeling that you're talking about. And again, you got to trust your gut. If you feel like somebody is being creepy or they're hitting on you or they're using real estate to disguise the fact they just want to go get a glass of wine, I got caught up in this for 2 years in the beginning of my career. I had 27, 29 male clients. I was making no money because I just kept hanging out with these guys. We'd go look at houses, but like they always wanted to get lunch or dinner after. And finally, I was like, fuck this. I dropped all of them except for two because one was a friend from college and one was a friend of a ex-boyfriend, which was very weird. Both turned into VIP clients, and everybody else I just never called again. I sat and meditated and said, I am only working with single women. I am only working with families and couples. I will not work with single men, even to this day. Somebody very close to me actually recently referred somebody to me. This man was married, and he started calling me every day. The person who referred it to me is very close to me, and I had to go to him and I said, listen, I don't want this to impact our relationship, but I can't work with this person because he's creeping me out. And he was like, okay, no problem. I was like, wait, you're not mad? And he's like, no, if you don't feel good about it, then don't do it. And that was the closest it's ever hit to home. Because if it's a friend of a friend, boys are going to be boys, they're going to hit on you. I kind of just came up with a very strenuous process. Like I demand proof of funds up front. Now that you have to have the buyer broker signed, I make them sign that right away. It's 3%. There's no negotiation. I have a very strenuous process up front. It's only business. And that's helped a little bit. It helps me protect myself. Am I losing out on business? Possibly, but I don't want to work with them. Or I bring in a male counterpart and they disappear.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I think if you're a man, you like, and you have those intentions, like you have that energy, and I feel like if you're a female, you could feel that energy too, where this is like, this doesn't sound like it is what it is. But unfortunately, like that's an instinct or intuition. I just find it interesting because I don't really have to think about it. I had a situation where that same agent asked, she was like, "Hey, what are you doing like on Monday?" I'm like, "Why?" I'm like, "What's going on?" And she showed me like the client and the emails. I was like, "Yeah, I can come along," but I would never, like it doesn't even cross my mind. So it's just interesting to hear because at least half of our office is female, you know, and
Yeah, it's an easy target. It's a really easy target because the people who are not seasoned enough or haven't built up enough of a backbone to say, I need to see your proof of funds, I need this, I need that. Those are like the low hanging fruit. So the creeper reaches out, this person's like, oh yeah, I'll go take you. Well, that's much easier than somebody who's going to ask you all these questions and you have to provide financials. It's a smart process to do, but it's very uncomfortable because again, we get into this hopium of wanting to I need the sale. I need the money. It's going to look good on my Instagram account. Like I get it, but your health and your safety are so much more. And let's not forget that once you've been in this business long enough, you do not want to be wasting your time. I don't care if it's a guy or a girl, whatever it is. Wasting your time is the worst thing on the planet because you can't get it back. Now I just wasted 2 years on this guy who keeps asking me out. I mean, it's just very, very frustrating. So it's definitely high guard and definitely something that you have to learn. It's a big learning curve as a female agent.
By the way,
Good, good question.
note to everybody: do not fuck with Lauren. She is strapped and is not messing around.
Oh
And
yeah,
and
I actually made a
she
whole.
will sniff it out before you even get to that point anyway.
Yeah, I'm just not interested. I've had it happen too many times, and I've been naive too many times, and that's kind of what it comes down to. Through all three of these P's, how naive are you? It's not until you have a little bit more experience and you've screwed up and you've wasted money and time that you're like, okay, I gotta stop and think about all this.
Nice, nice. Well, Lauren, that's enough for episode 4 there. I appreciate your time and hope to keep hope to keep these coming. I learn a lot from them. I know people listening will too.
Yeah, we always have a good time.
Yeah, no,
Episode
it's
5. Let us
completely
know what
different
you wanted to talk
perspectives.
about.
Oh, I could probably keep this going on. We'd lose the entire audience, but we'll have another one. We'll have another one soon. So, Lauren, how do people find you?
I am over on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. Everything is at Lauren M. House. Easy.
The YouTube's growing, isn't it?
It is. Every time I post, I get like 1 to 5 followers and I get all excited.
It is. The first year for me was pretty much crickets, so keep it up.
Yeah. It's fun. It's very fun.
Maybe
Challenging,
have
but
a
fun.
video with the, strapped, so you can get away, get the
Totally.
bad clients away, right? So
That's funny. Thanks, Fletch. Nice to see
cool.
you.
All right, Lauren, have a good one.